winning every game after that. So they've been down before. Obviously, no year is the same. And I don't think like, I wish they didn't get to this place because I don't think it's good to just be like, oh, see, like you don't want to become accustomed to this because a lot of things have to go right in order for you to bring it back up. But I do think that there are reasons for optimism within this team, morale wise, within themselves and with their within their own brotherhood, within the caliber of players that they have. Maybe they haven't played up to their standard yet, but we know that they're capable. We've seen all these players play a lot better. We've seen them work a lot better together. We've seen Brock Purdy do better, and we've seen Kyle Shanahan coach and call phenomenal games and give his quarterback opportunities to win games. So I believe that if I think they'll turn it around. Like I don't think this is a lost season right now, but I think Kyle Shanahan is a big part of that. I don't think he's terrible. I think he, like everyone, deserves criticism right now. And when we're talking about being here before, you have to talk about, okay, why do Kyle Shanahan teams always seem to find this rut? I think that's an important, and totally fair criticism. But I don't think, I'm not saying to fire him right now, or that he's unable to do this. They were saying that about Andy Reid before he won the Super Bowl. They were saying, he's never going to make it. You have to keep getting to the hill to eventually get over it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm gonna give two reasons for optimism. Is the first one being they started worse in the past couple of years than 5-3. They started 3-4, 3-5, I believe, 1 year or 2 years back to back, 3-4, like something like that, back to back years. And to me, like turning your season around like that, that's back against the wall. Like situations back against the wall. If you don't get a win, your season's over, kind of thing. And they're not in that kind of situation right now. Like they're in a good spot to make the playoffs, even with the schedule getting tough and it getting down to the wire with some really good teams.
My only thing, when we talk about making the playoffs, the only thing that sucks is like I did think that getting that number 1 seed and having that rest is important, and it makes me a little bit bummed to be like I think they could get back to the NFC Championship, but I wonder if they're going to be able to win the Super Bowl if they have to like use all this energy just to get to where they could have been if these last, a couple plays went differently in these last 2 games.
And that's a great way to put it too, because like you do want to. It is a lot easier to play from home than it is to be on the road and have to go, especially if you have to go to Philly. Like we know what kind of environment that is. Like it's a hostile environment. So it's a scary situation, but I think they have the kind of guys to go in there and win. Like they have Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Debo. Like just naming those guys, like you have the dudes to do it. Now, I think the players to be, I obviously named a couple players to be a reason why for optimism, but the energy, it's going to be changed. When you make a trade for a player like Chase Young, the energy is going to be different on next Sunday.
Yeah.
It's going to be, you're going to see the 49ers defense that we're used to seeing with Chase Young. You're going to see just because, and a new face, new energy.
Gives
You're
them
excited.
morale boost for sure.
Absolutely. So you're going to see like, that's what I'm excited about. That's the optimism, I think. And I think putting him opposite of Nick Bosa, I think we haven't had no one opposite of Nick Bosa like that since D4. D4.
And if this team like these things spiral off each other, right? Like negative things can spiral, but so can positive things. So if Nick Bosa is getting more opportunities to maybe actually get some sacks and get the production that we're used to him getting, that's going to motivate the rest of the defense. That's going to help the secondary. Because right now I feel like the pressure that's been put on the secondary is pretty unfair because all the money is in the defensive line. Like we're not set up to have the secondary be the part of the team that's carrying us right now. So, I think if Chase Young can take away some of those double, triple teams on Nick Bosa, then that could, if Nick Bosa starts getting home, imagine how inspired the defense is. Now the defense is getting off the field. They're doing better. That's giving more opportunities for the offense. Like these things will start flowing together, so I can definitely see that having a really positive spin on it.
Absolutely. Especially because like that's what the team's been missing is like that one play defensively. Like that's all this defense needs, one play. Once they get one play, it feels like plays start trickling on top of each other. They start adding on to each other. So I think one play happens, we'll start seeing really good things. to do. I
What do
do
you think
see
of?
I do see Hector De Leon's comment that should have already happened, bringing in Randy Gregory. It's different. Randy Gregory isn't that kind of player. He's so what Randy Gregory is. Yes, it brings energy, brings excitement. It's like, oh, cool, we got another edge rusher. But Randy Gregory is never been a player like Chase. You know, like what I mean by this is by
Chase
Chase
Young
Young
was
is,
number 2 overall pick.
but more than just that. That's Nick Bosa, one of Nick Bosa's best friends. Like,
Yeah.
you tell me if I didn't get if my
Yeah,
company
if you
right
have your
now
best friend.
hired my best friend, I got to work with my best friend every day, and I got to play alongside them, like in a game. Oh, gee, oh my goodness! Like, of course, I'm gonna be. I'm betting you. I bet you I get the quarterback faster. That's exactly what they're gonna do, and it's gonna be fun to watch. Very fun to watch.
I like that. I hope that happens. I like we said reason for optimism, and that's definitely an optimistic look on it. Really quick, Billy said he was carried by Sala, D'Amico, and McDaniel. Now they're all gone. I don't necessarily know if that's true. I think having all of them together definitely. I mean, if you look back at that team, that's crazy that you had 4 head coaches all on one team. I think Sala brought incredible energy that really inspired this defense. I think D'Amico brought that grit and energy that balanced out Kyle Shanahan's negativity. Both of them, Sala and D'Amico, extremely positive. I think Mike McDaniel was more of some brains and also maybe like a safe guy to go to. When Debo's going through those contract extension things, he kind of talked about always being able to talk with Mike McDaniel and turn to him on times. And sometimes you've heard players talk about Kyle being a little bit harsh. And so maybe players felt like they could go to McDaniel and he was kind of the second in line, so they could maybe bring their concerns to him without the fear of Kyle responding wrong. So I think it is important to have trusted guys in your community and to or within your front office within your team, and to acknowledge how beneficial they were to the team. But I don't think you can say they carried him. I think all of them in conjunction probably really helped each other. And now that he's missing them, it's definitely noticeable. So,
I mean,
is there a difference to you in being carried? Like, I think yes, he's missing them, but I don't think they were the only reason for his success. You know what I mean?
in 2019 when we went to the Super Bowl, right? We had with Salah, we had a top 5 defense, probably number 1 at the time. But I like to say top 5 because they're all just so many good defenses in that 5 category. So looking at the Niners, right? Top 5 defense. Their offense was scoring 29 points a game. He wasn't getting carried by no defense that year. Like, that's 29 points wins you a lot of damn games in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now, you look at these coaches, right? What they've done as the head coach themselves. Robert Saleh
I'm
hasn't done
impressed.
nothing. He hasn't done much with the Jets, and he's had
I
a
feel
good
like
defense.
he's winning with Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson was so the thing is like when people like Zach Wilson was drafted number 2 overall for a reason though. Like it wasn't like he was just like it's
No,
not like
Zach
he's
Wilson
winning with Brock
sucks.
Purdy, right? I think Zach Wilson's better than Brock Purdy. We give Kyle
No,
absolutely. I would
no,
absolutely
you're
swear. I'm not even joking. I would
you're
take
doing a
Zach
Larry right now. You're saying some shit
no,
that's
like
like
no, like if you
I'm kidding.
think about it, if you give Kyle Zach Wilson, just even though Zach Wilson has his stupid mistakes, stupid flaws,
He can't check the ball down.
but you're giving him layup throws. They're not giving him layup throws in New York. They're not giving him the simple things in New York that Kyle would give Zach Wilson.
I wish we could do an experiment. I wish
It,
we could make them switch for a game.
and I think people would be shocked because we've seen Zach Wilson look really, really good this year. We've also seen him look really bad this year. So when I'm looking at Zach Wilson, personally, I think he would be solid in the 49ers offense.
I love that we stumbled upon
The thing is, it's an interesting topic. It is very interesting.
Yeah.
But we also got to look at Zach Wilson. If we're gonna give Brock his flowers for winning, Zach Wilson's been winning. He's 3-3 right now this year. So like, it's not great.
But watch the game. Zach Wilson is so bad in the games.
Winning. But look, I'm
the defense is like scoring the touchdowns for him.
Oh no, their defense is
like,
insane. Their defense is insane.
Yeah.
His Salah's defense is his defense. Like it's still elite.
And that's just a problem with this is a side note. That's just a problem with being a defensive coordinator and then a defensive head coach that kind of sucks. It's like you're so reliant on like an offensive coordinator to carry.
Yeah. But like when
But
looking
and
at
then D'Amico, you look at D'Amico, freaking CJ Stroud looks like a stud. I feel like he's gonna win Rookie of the Year, maybe.
also
Maybe not.
drafted high, right? Like
Yeah,
so
yeah, true, true,
it's like
true.
the
But
thing is Kyle's doing it with the
people were
seventh
like,
round
oh,
pick.
like the Texans, like they suck. Like people were saying, like it was bad that they didn't get Bryce Young, Panthers, Bryce Young.
Oh yeah.
And it ended up being a blessing. He's playing way better than Bryce Young right now.
Oh,
Obviously,
I
their
agree.
teams are different, but I feel like and D'Amico's. I mean, he has a bunch of. We're going to talk about it later. I miss Jimmy Ward, but his defense is performing really well. Mike McDaniel. We were just talking about how impressive the Dolphins are. Come on,
No, yeah,
those
no,
coaches are doing phenomenal.
they're
Like, yeah,
doing
they
good. They're
haven't
doing
won a
good.
Super Bowl yet, but they're in their early years.
I'm not saying they're doing bad. Like I think they're doing good, but you could also like if we're gonna criticize Kyle and like, oh, Kyle, we haven't won because of Kyle. Well, Mike McDaniel. If you look at the Dolphins right now, people are saying that they can't beat good teams. That's Mike McDaniel. D'Amico,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him his flowers because he's doing a phenomenal job in his first season as a head coach with the team that is terrible. It was a very, very bad team he took over. He's doing phenomenal. Robert Saleh, he's probably on the hot seat. Like realistically, he
Yeah, but
probably
he's on
is.
this hot seat because like New York,
But the thing is though is
and
I wish we had New York kind of beat reporters because if we
I do
did,
too.
geez,
It'd be
we'd be
fun.
getting some great questions. Like
It'd
they
be
hold
fun.
you
It'd
to
be
the
fun.
fire. Like so.
Did you hear the question? It was in where was the game? The Miami game was played in Germany, right?
Oh, that was a great question. Yeah, he broke
Yeah,
down
yeah,
the
yeah,
entire offense. That
yeah.
was
I
phenomenal.
love when reporters sound like they know what they're talking about.
That was
I feel like
phenomenal.
even if it throws a coach off, I know for our team, some of our reporters get criticism if they ask hard hitting questions. But I love you're right. I love that about the New York media. I think you know what I mean. I don't think you need to. I don't know if just firing any guy after 3 years is the best strategy, but I think it's fair to at least question them.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta definitely question it. I think Robert Saleh stays the head coach. I think his defense has kept him an opportunity to be a head coach. They just need to get that offense right. They try to do it with Aaron Rodgers. He might be back in late December, which is insane. But I don't think I don't think Kyle Shanahan was carried by his coordinators. Now, when you have great coaches around a great coach, of course you're gonna have a great team. Like you have great coach. That's 3 head coaches. That's 4 head coaches on one team. That's insane. Of course you're gonna be good. Like, of course you're gonna have a better team because they're every position level, every little detail is noticed. Every little detail was caught. So I think if you can't really say he was carried because they've all done a good job.
I like this guy said, good points. Not saying that he hates Kyle. There are a few coaches he'd rather have just on the energy side and leadership side. They got tons for those 3. And I very much agree with that. And I think that that's when we're talking about morale and stuff. I think we both Marco and I have touched on that and it being kind of difficult having a different type of defensive play caller and hopefully they adjust to that. This guy said, "Bring back Salah for DC next year." I think he's going to get another shot with Aaron Rodgers because of the Achilles. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to work out well for him. Like, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl with a old Aaron Rodgers with half an Achilles, but you know. Um, so, and then this guy, I thought this was interesting. And we were kind of saying this reason for optimism. We have talent to be dominant on defense. And if they can rise up in the second half of the season, it could rejuvenate the team to get back to running the ball and be the team we are. And I completely agree, Matt. I think Marco and I were saying that same thing. And Marco made a great point about the addition of Chase Young, maybe inspiring some of that change that's going to go on in because as soon as Nick Bosa starts performing well, because a lot of people they point out the number of sacks. Was it with you where you were telling me it's actually not that different than last year when you look at all the sacks that are happening around Nick Bosa? Drake Jackson had 3 sacks last year. He has 3 sacks now. The rest of the line had I think like 7 total sacks between all of them. So those things are still happening. What's not happening is Nick Bosa doesn't have like 12 sacks right now, which at this time in the year last year he had a ton of sacks. So I think hopefully that addition of Chase Young really opens him up. And I agree. If if the defense starts to look inspired and motivated again, I think that this team, the 49ers, go as their defense goes, and I think that that will help their offense. Now, if the defense isn't able to do that, I think it's important, and Marco's done a good job about of this, that we also criticize the offense. I think we've, as fans, have become so accustomed to this team being carried by their defense that if the defense isn't being literally a top 5 defense, we're like, well, see, they suck. And it's like, okay, well, every once in a while, your offense, other teams let teams score 30 points and their offense still wins the game. So it is important to keep the criticism not just on the defensive side, just because we're used to them carrying it, but also I think it is fair to notice a difference. As a fan, I felt that first half of the Bengals game, I just felt like it was shocking. Like I was just the lack of effort. So I think that that's fair to point out. But I also think it's fair when I'm saying that, instead of putting all of my energy into talking about that, also acknowledging, hey, it's also shocking that this quarterback keeps throwing, 3 interceptions in the most pivotal moments of the game. So it's important to balance out that criticism. I completely agree. And then this guy really quick says, touche, isn't Bosha still like top 3 in pressures? Yeah, he's not doing pressure wise. And people agree or disagree with PFF, but he's like he's rated like number 1 in PFF grades right now as like a defensive in his position group. So he's getting pressures. He's just not getting home. And hopefully, and that's really why I hoped that they got a cornerback, because I think if they were able to hold guys from getting open for like a second longer, everything in the NFL is just like a second, right? So he just had like 1 step more time. Or I think I was talking to you, potentially, if the scheme is getting a little predictable, switching some stuff up. Although I know Richard Sherman kind of talked about, instead of switching things up, getting back to the basics. But I agree. I think reasons for optimism is we know that we have the right players, and we know we have capable players, and we know we have motivational players too. So even if it's not a coordinator, we have guys like Fred Warner, who I believe, like, I don't think that those players are going to let the team slip and just, have a horrible season. I think like that those players on the team are going to, from the grips, bring up the team themselves if they have to, if they can't rely on coordinators to do it. And I imagine that Kyle Shanahan is doing a lot of self-reflecting on how he's going to call the offense, and that he's also probably working a lot with Steve Wilkes. It seems like this bye week came at the perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
I know earlier there was a comment saying, the schedule isn't going to get any easier. So I think it's good that they're able to recoup before a kind of harder portion of the schedule. How do you feel about them going into Jacksonville? Really quick.
Just to go on the pressures before I go to Jacksonville. I think pressures are only impactful if they impact a throw or they cause a turnover. Like, if pressure isn't impactful, for example, I could have someone running down my face, getting ready to hit me. I could get rid of the ball before he touches me. It's a pressure. Technically, it's a pressure, but I could throw a touchdown. Did that pressure matter? No,
and we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of that. We've seen. I used to have it written down, but like quarterbacks have a high completion